delighted to rise and contribute to the Water Legislation Amendment Bill of 2023. The Water and Catchment Legislation Amendment Act was introduced and it made some very significant changes to the water framework within Victoria. This includes the introduction of place of take approvals designed to help secure water supply for irrigators, particularly in years where there's a shortfall of water, something we see fairly often in Australia.
By delaying the commencement for this framework, we're giving them relief at a time when they're grappling with the impacts of last year's floods and don't have the means to grapple with a really big change in the framework for how they use water.
I do not oppose this bill, but I call for this government to work harder with rural and regional communities to preserve this finite but vital resource. This bill is characteristic of the Andrews government waste and mismanagement of project.
It has been incredibly difficult for those people that this bill will affect to effectively engage in consultation in many ways, namely because they are rebuilding their communities, rebuilding their homes and rebuilding their lives after horrible flood events.
Lake Eildon today is at 93.17% of capacity. The winter recharge in a typical year is 30%. So they know that there's going to be well in excess of what the lake is able to cope with, and that water needs to be released. Now, people are very worried and they want the ministers certainly to intervene because it is unprecedented that the lake is at 94% at this time of year. Usually it's much lower, around 70%.
I can't think of an area of public policy, perhaps outside of taxation, that has been so hotly contested literally since Federation as water, particularly as each of those states and the communities that reside in each of those states contest for their own interest in how we manage environmental water, how we manage agricultural water, and how we manage climate change. It's not easy public policy, and people, of course, are ultimately very exercised by the importance from any number of different perspectives. Now, this bill, I think, is important. It kind of builds on the work that we have been doing.
This legislation, the Water Legislation Amendment Bill 2023, is yet another piece in the puzzle of water policy to try and deal with those issues of scarcity and who should get the water that everybody wants.
The Murray-Darling Basin is an incredibly important area too, as it covers 14% of Australia and it's home to about 2 million people. The basin's agricultural output accounts for about 40% of Australia's agricultural output. So, you know, this is an incredibly important area to us.
Being from an irrigated horticultural background, however, one might say I'm less enthusiastic to add more regulation to water and the system, but it could actually be a good news story for those of us downstream of the choke, because it does the system can be hard to manage for those that rely on water to produce food, particularly in drier times. And it does clarify, you know, some sections of the 2021 Amendment Act, which will essentially protect the existing rights of the Victorian water user and provide a bit more flexibility to manage their own delivery.
The Greens have long been clear that decades of corruption, mismanagement, poor decision-making have left our waterways in crisis, and particularly driven by vested interests and governments giving in to vested interests when it comes to water. Technical changes and revised frameworks, I mean, fine, but they're really not even scratching at the surface of the crisis that we're facing. And so we need to make sure that governments really look at the problems that we're facing and do so much more to protect water as the life-giving source that it is.